This is Truth Be Told.
That not only are there reptilians here,
new evidence of UFO fleets.
We were close to nuclear war.
To help you transform so that you can live your highest truth.
We're not being told just because we're not ready for it.
Radio stations of frequency, vibrational.
I was a homicide detective with LAPD.
UFOs increase. Visitations. The Timeless Echoes, unveiling the mysteries of Dendera Temple. Welcome to another episode of Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Today we dive into the mysteries of ancient Egypt at the Temple of Dendera with José María Barrera. José is a renowned author, photographer, computer scientist who unveils the celestial wisdom hidden within the Dendera's architecture. Utilizing over 5,000 photos, he reconstructs the temple's cosmetic narrative, from the sweeping processions of the Equinoxes to the daily rhythms of the Nile. Join us as Barrera decodes the ancient Egypt's astrological insights and spiritual connections, offering a profound journey into the intersection of arts, science, and spirituality. So hold on to your pharaohs, where ancient secrets and modern understandings meet, shedding the light on timeless truths for today's enlightenment seekers. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Please welcome to the Truth Be Told studios for the first time, José María Barrera. Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, Tony.
I'm excited to have you here. I love when people take me on a trip to Egypt. It didn't even cost me, a dime other than just having you here. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for writing this amazing book. What stood out to me is your background: software engineer and applications architect, specializing in data representation in languages. How in the heck, and I'm sure you get this question a lot, how did you even start getting interested in Dendera?
Okay, so my philosophy of life at the end is that everything is related with everything else. And if you really want to understand reality, everything has to be harmonious. And I think that's something that happened in the past. There was we have a lot of knowledge today and a lot of specialization on things today, but people who know about your toenail have no idea how that's related to your heart or mathematics or anything else, because people are hyper specialized and knowledge is compartmentalized. In the past, they had a unified field of knowledge, and I think we are advanced in many ways, but I think we to a detriment, in the sense that we lost the holistic approach to understanding reality. So in my head, in a weird, funny sense, the idea that I'm interested in Dendera and that I'm a computer scientist and I specialize in languages and data representation, as you said, makes sense. So I can get into details on that. I think the Temple of Dendera was either fortuitous or my destiny to end up there. So some years ago, I ended up in a trip to Egypt to visit Egypt and the different places. And I ended up at this wonderful temple where you are standing right now. And it was the most impressive place that I've been in my life, like a man-made structure. Mm-hmm. And it caused a deep impression on me. And the fact that the ceiling underneath that temple were right behind you, were the ceiling, that those columns that you have behind you, those columns that you have behind you, those columns are gigantic. The ceiling that is supported by those columns is like 7 stories high.
Wow.
It's incredible. So the magnitude of that temple, look at the size of that, right? And that ceiling has full color. It was cleaned like 10 years ago, and is it depicts all these celestial images, and it's obvious that the ceiling depicts the sky, because you have like first of all, it's full of stars everywhere,
Right.
drawn everywhere. But second, it has the constellations of the zodiac represented by them, right? Like with the symbols of the zodiac that we know today. So when I went there, I loved this place, and I was fascinated by the ceiling. But when I came back from Egypt, I started to try to look for information about this ceiling, and there was nothing in English, nothing. Like
Oh,
you
really?
cannot find, yeah, very, very, very few scattered things here and there, but there is no systematic study of this ceiling anywhere in English. And what you find is works that are academic in nature, and usually they're either in French or in German,
Right.
written by Egyptologists. And what they have is the dry translations of the text on the ceiling, which many of them are really boring. But that's the extent of it. Nobody explains to you what the ceiling is about and what was the reason for this thing to be. And so basically, the book that I wanted to find is the book that I wrote, because
Wow.
I couldn't find it. And I think it's for the first time like a systematic description of the whole ceiling, done in context, because I'm not I'm not an Egyptologist. This is a hobby for me, and I had to read like 200 books on different topics. So what I give here is context, because in order to understand anything, and we go back to how we opened, that everything is related to everything else. In order to understand something, you have to understand the context of why this thing makes sense and where is its place in the map of knowledge, right? And understanding. Right. So that's what I try to do with the book. The book is an introduction to the ancient Egyptian myths and ancient Egyptian astronomy and astronomy in general. And it's like a zoom where I start very far away, like very like bird's eye, and then in time and space, right? And then what I start to do is I start to approach the Egypt, and then the temple, and then the ceiling, and then each image on the ceiling. And by the time that you are looking at each image on the ceiling, you already have the context behind in order to appreciate and understand this magnificent work, basically.
And I always I've heard this all my life, a picture is a window to the soul. And I think what I found fascinating, that you use a lot of high-res photography or photographs to really do a lot of your research, and how did you use these photographs to construct your book, and when did you finally realize how important these photographs were?
So after that first trip, and once I understood that this didn't happen, this book, I imagined the whole thing in my head, like, right. Oh, this is the end result. And and it was a shame to me that, like, you go to this temple, and the problem is that like what you see behind you, as I said, is 7-story, that is a dark ceiling, right? And you look upwards, and these images are gigantic, but they're very far away, and you're under the heat of Egypt, and usually it's in a tour where you have 2 minutes to walk through this place, because then you have to go and visit the rest of the temple, which is very big. And so people don't have the time, and this is not very, very light. It's a dark place. And you're there, and you're jet lagged, and it's so many things that to me it was like, oh my God, it's like, imagine the Sistine Chapel that you found somewhere, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel lost, and there is no systematic study of that anywhere. So I was like, oh, this is what has to happen, right? So what I did is I went there, and so the ceiling is comprised by 7 panels. And what I did is I took 5,000 photos with a camera and a tripod of the whole ceiling. So I was
Mhm.
like moving the tripod, take photos, moving.
Right.
So I spent 3 days, 3 whole days in the temple in this room taking photos of the ceiling, and I took close-ups of different parts of that, and then I had to like the so at the end of that, the funny thing is that the back pain and the neck pain was
I'm
unbearable for
sure.
looking upwards for 3 days. And when I came back to the States, um, I took the images, and it took me like 3 months to reconstruct the whole ceiling out of all these images,
Oh my
because
gosh. Wow.
basically at the end I have a gigantic image, because these are each snapshot that I took, each close-up
Mm-hmm.
is a high resolution image. So when you put them all together, then you create something like Google Maps, where you can look at the whole ceiling, and then you can start zooming in. And actually I can show you that
Oh,
if
that'd be
you
great.
yeah, I can show you the whole ceiling here. Can I show?
Yes. I think let me see. I may have to make
Yes.
you co-host.
Uh,
There we go. Now you should be able to share.
okay. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Yeah, so that's for the people who are watching this. This is the whole ceiling of the temple. This is like the size of 2 tennis courts, and the black squares that you have that you see around them, 24. Those are the columns, actually, the ones that you could see on behind your background.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the columns there, and then what you can do here in this map, right, is just like Google Maps. I can go and I can start zooming in, and
Oh
then I
wow.
can I can explore the whole, like, look, you can go up to like the latest crack on the ceiling,
Wow, that's
and
amazing.
and you can just traverse this, and you can get lost in the ceiling, right? Like, I'm
I'm
looking
sure
at
you
this,
could.
but imagine how tantalizing it is to come here, and then you start to see these things, and they're so beautiful. Look at the colors; like, they look like
Yeah.
this is like 2,000 years old, and it
It's
looks like
amazing, yeah, that
finished
they kept the
yesterday, right? Like
color.
they cleaned it like a decade ago. And but imagine how frustrating it is to be in front of this, and you realize that this is beautiful and amazing, and having no idea what it means and what it is, right? So this is Leo, the constellation of Leo, for example, and so on, right? Like, you can just traverse. And so what the book does is the book goes through each these panels, and it describes every scene and every character in the panel and who they are and what we know about them, right? Like, there's a lot of things that we have no idea. But more than that, is it gives the context of, oh, so this is the myth of Isis or of Osiris, and that's why it's represented here in this way, and so on and so forth. So hopefully, by the end of reading this book, you know about Egyptian mythology and Egyptian astronomy, because I explain what's the meaning of each of the panels, and you can appreciate in its fullest the ceiling, basically.
And how
So,
did you learn what this meaning was?
oh, the meaning. So the so it's a multifaceted approach. So the first thing is, there is a French woman, an Egyptologist
Right.
called Sylvie Coville, and she spent 35 years in this temple, and basically translating every single writing on the ceiling. So, and she has like volume after volume after volume explaining every single wall and column and everything in the temple. Now, the way it works is that, so let's go to, I'm going to show you something like, for example, let's look at some hieroglyphs here, and I'll tell you how that works.
Okay.
So, and by the way, I don't read hieroglyphs, but I use her work to get the translation in French, because she's French, so the book is in French. So the first thing that you do is, like, a beautiful thing about hieroglyphs is that they can be read from left to right, from right to left, or from up to down, right? Like,
Hmm.
so there are three ways to read hieroglyphs. So the first thing that you do when you look at hieroglyphs is, the first question is, am I going to be reading this left to right or right to left?
Right.
And the way you know that is you look for there is always a face or a person or an animal or something, and they're sideways, always looking sideways to the left or the right. And then the way you read hieroglyphs is you go in the opposite direction of the face. So for example, say this column here. So this is up, you're gonna read this from up to down, right? Like this is a column of hieroglyphs here.
Right.
And then you look at the falcon here, or the man here, and then you know, oh, so this is gonna be read from left to right. No, sorry, from right to left. I'm dyslexic, by the way, so that's another complication.
That probably didn't help much.
No, it doesn't. So you start, okay, so you have here a feather, and then here is a rope and two feathers. So you start to read this way, and then you go back here, and you read this way, and then here, and this way, and then this one, and then this one. And so you start to read from left to right downwards. But it could be the other way around, or if the text, like say here, right? Let's see. So that's how you read hieroglyphs, basically. Like,
wow.
Let's look at another one that I wanted to show you, like this one here. Yeah. So, for example, these, yeah. So these are in columns.
Right.
But look at this one. This is in a row.
All right.
And look at the faces this way. So the way you read it is this one first, then this is 3. This is plural. This means this is a number, like this means plural. The star means this is the name of a star or something, and then you read this way, like up, down, and down, up, down, this way.
Wow. So
that's how you read. So the first thing, this very long explanation was, so the way the Egyptologists do this is, the first thing that they do is they transcribe the hieroglyphs, and usually they're not clear, right? Like you can see there's a lot of like damages here and so on.
Right.
So the first thing that they do is they transcribe them. They take all the images, and they're like 700 different images that they use, characters in modern terms. And what you do is you write them from right to left in a line, instead of having these like funny things where they can be on top of another and so on. And that's one book that she has, and that's a lot of work, field work, where she has to go there, or the Egyptologist who's in the field has to go there, and they start to copy that from left to right, the way we read all the characters, right? So that's the first part. Then the next part is called the transliteration, and is that ancient Egyptian is mostly phonetical. So what they do is they write now is all the phonemes of what the sound is of what you're writing, and then out of that they come to the translation. So, but these things are scattered; they're not together. You don't have like the image of the ceiling and then the transcription and the transliteration and the translation into French in this case. But it's scattered all over the place, so I had to go to her books, get her books, which, by the way, cost a fortune.
I'm sure.
and you have to, because they're hyper specialized, and then you have to do all this correlation between, okay, this is the ceiling, here's where the image is, and where the text is, and then you find it in her book where she has the transcription, and then go to the transliteration, and finally to the French, which is the easiest thing to translate out of all this.
Right.
And then I did the translation into English. But that only tells you what is written here, right? But there is no context. You have all these. So now you have this thing in English that talks about all these strange figures and names of places and gods and all these things. So then the next thing that you have to do is you have to start studying all these things, right? And finding, okay, so who is this god? Who is, oops, what was that? Now I see myself. Yeah. So let me show you. So then the next thing, this became an interactive presentation. That's cool.
I love it though. We love that presentation. I love visuals.
Yeah, so let me, I'm very visual. So let me go back to this. So now I'm going to take my camera. And so all this, right?
It's her book.
All this here.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Like, that's the ceiling there. So all that is all the books that I have to, like, I found a name there. So you go to Google, you Google who was this god,
Right.
right? And then you find the story, and then I read a book here, and I find the reference, and I start to fill out the knowledge, right, of what's happening. And then the end result of this is I take this, and because I'm not an academic, and I'm not an Egyptologist, then what I did is I put a book that humans can read, basically.
Yeah, I was going to say, move your camera down so we can see that handsome face. There we go.
So, but now you see all my dirt. So, so you end up So what I did is I took all this information, all these like hundreds of books and her translation, all this, and I took my ceiling, like the image that you saw, and now the book is the explanation of each image, giving the context and the knowledge around it to understand what the hell is this about, right? Like so that's a book, basically.
That, I have to say, that probably took you a while, because I couldn't even imagine trying to not only translate, but just looking at each image and trying to match it with what she's explaining. So that definitely, congratulations on taking the time for that, because that's a lot of time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of work, but let me tell you, very fulfilling and very enjoyable at the end. Like,
yeah, and
I learned a lot out of it.
I'm sure you did. And we don't really hear as much. We always go to the Great Pyramid and other areas in Egypt, but we don't hear a lot about Dendera and let's say in Temple of Time. I'm curious on when they use that phrase, Temple of Time. What does that mean?
Okay, so no,
to us folks, like, we don't know what that means.
Yeah. So that's the subtitle of the book, and basically that I decided, or basically at the end, I realized that this ceiling, even though it's astronomical in nature, it depicts stars, and what it is about the cycles of time. So this ceiling and this room, and in general this temple, is a temple about time, because this is a map of time expressed in the movements of the stars and the different cycles of day and night, and the month and the year and the hours and so on. And so it's based on the movements of the stars and relative to our planet, and the periodicity that they have, and the rhythms of time and the cycles. And so that's why I call the book Temple of Time, because this ceiling is an explanation of time, the view that the Egyptians have of time, which is very different, by the way, from the view that we have today. Today, we think of time like an arrow, like a linear thing that goes from the past to the future forever, and it's ideological when you think about it. It's like, oh yeah, so there was a guy called Christ 2,000 years ago, right? And now you live your life, and then at the end you die, and then you go to heaven or hell, and you're in for eternal damnation or bliss. And that's a linear representation of time from the past to the future. That's it. The conception of time of ancient cultures, and in particular the Egyptians, it was cyclical. So when you think about it, movement and rhythms and time is expressed like time, and is a harmony. It's about cycles. So day and night, the hours happen again and again and again, and then you have the day and night, and then the months and the lunations come, and so on, and the years, and you look at nature, everything is in cycles, right? Like you have the seasons, and then it's not only that the temperature changes in time, no, but life changes with the seasons. Right, and the leaves fall and then grow, and life grows and dies and so on. So when you think about time like that, it becomes this very animated conception of time where it becomes organic, and it's
Yeah.
an organic time where time has qualities, right? It's not just like we're partitioning into abstract instants, right? Or segments of every second, and every second has the same length and so on. No, these all of the sudden time has texture, time
Yeah.
has color, and it has different attributes.
Yeah, and
So
and the time to me is like the weather, because it's very unpredictable. And some people want it to snow on Christmas Day. It may take 3 or 4 years, but finally you do get a snow on Christmas Day. So time is just like that. It's unpredictable. It can be exciting. It can be scary. But yeah, I think the ancients, not just in Egypt, but in many other cultures around the world, accepted how time, like you're explaining to us, is not scary. It's just a part of life.
Yeah, and it's organic, right? Like,
yeah,
I think one of the things that we've done with our hyper rationality and intellectualism is that we have created these abstractions that are very powerful, right? It allows us to create clocks and then computers, and you and I can talk even though we're like hundreds or thousands of miles away
right.
from each other. So that kind of thing allows you to do this, but you lose when you create things that are abstract, you lose the feeling of them. You lose. So time has texture. Like, for example, the sun, right? Like when you think about the sun today, like, which is one of the main characters of the story in this ceiling, right? It's the sun, obviously in the middle of the desert in Egypt, is one of the main characters of this story. If you think about it, the abstraction that we have is also is a nuclear reaction. 8 light minutes away from Earth, and that's a star, and it's this dead thing that is just like explode, like nuclear explosion somewhere else, and we get the radiation here
right,
of that,
right.
and that's what we live. But is that the inanimate object abstract that we can kind of, we have this conception of it, but it's abstract. Like, what is a nuclear reaction? We have no idea, nothing. But think about it differently. Like, the sun in the morning, the qualities, not the sun itself, the qualities of the sun, of a rising sun, are very different from the sun at noon or the sun at sunset. And so the sun at noon is super potent, right? It's like the warmest sun of all of them. And then in the afternoon, the color of the sun changes, the mood of the sky around the sun changes. Same thing in the morning at sunrise. So all of a sudden, the sun is not this abstract thing, ball of goo, like millions
right.
of years away from us, but it becomes something that is your environment, is the heat that you feel in your body is there, and that's what they represented here. Allow me to show that is one of the beautiful images in the temple. So one of the panels is the hours of the day, and each panel represents a different cycle in time. And so let's go to this one, which is one of the most beautiful ones. This panel represents, where is it? Yeah, here. This panel shows the hours of the day, the 12 hours of the day, which, by the way, the Egyptians are the ones who divided the day into 24 hours, 12 during the day and 12 at night. So this is a part that is like kind of damaged on the temple, but you can see what you have is 12 boats, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And in each boat, at the center of the boat, is the sun. So this is the journey, the daily journey of the sun from sunrise to sunset. And then in the morning, the sun is represented like a little kid suckling his thumb, right? Look, the young sun.
Right.
And then as the day goes,
they get older.
He starts to grow, and now look, he's like a teenager with the head of a ram. So that's potency, right? Like it means like the sun is starting to become the source of life, right? Like the generation. And then as you start to look how he grows into a young adult, and then at noon you have a ram, four-headed ram. Look at that. So what does that mean? So this is the sun in the zenith, right? Like the highest point in the sky at noon. And then it has four heads because they represent the four cardinal points. And then it's a ram with four heads. What is the ram the symbol of? The symbol of potency, right? Of reproduction, of force, of strength. And with four heads. So this is the maximum power of the sun. And then from this point on, the sun starts to decline and starts to go down. So you start to see now. Look, it's not like the full sun anymore, like in a
right
the circle anymore. And then, oh, sorry, I did something weird here.
Then it's gone.
Yeah. So as the day goes by, look at the sun now is a mature guy here, and then look how he's a ram, and look at the front of the boat there is a mummy. So we're starting to start the sunset, and now look, he's an old guy, right? And then in the last boat is an old guy with a cane. So this is the sun at sunset when he's right before he dies in the horizon, right? It goes down the horizon.
That's pretty amazing. Those
are the qualities of the sun, the texture of the sun across the hours of the day. And that's that panel. That panel represents the 12 hours of the day, which is the most like the first cycle that you see of time. That is the obvious one, the rotation of in their terms. And that's what we see and what we feel, like the sun revolving around Earth every day, right? Like shows up in the horizon, goes up, goes down on the other end.
That's pretty amazing. And you know, we as people of modern times, that when we look at these, we think, oh, it's pretty and oh, it's amazing, but there are messages in many of these hieroglyphs, and especially on this ceiling. And so what messages are coming out of these amazing hieroglyphs on the ceiling, and are there any myths that we might have brought into this day and age that still are not explained due to this temple?
Right. So yeah, this like the information captured here in this place, and I would say in every temple in Egypt, right? Like it's enormous. Like every single scene of this has meaning and has deep knowledge on it. I think that the biggest message behind this, right, is the secret of why ancient Egypt lasted for so long, and is encoded in this ceiling, and is the fact that, so think about what happened in this temple. The astronomer priests who work at this temple, they look at the sky, and they were looking at the movements of the stars. And let me track back a little bit. Like the most important thing in Egypt for Egyptians was the flooding of the Nile. So think about in context what happens in Egypt. Egypt is a desert with a 1,000-kilometer oasis, which is the Nile.
Right.
And that Nile, before it was dammed, it used to have a flooding every year, and it went almost dry. And then the flooding came, and then the waters flooded the banks of the Nile. And when the waters receded, then you had this very fertile land, because you got all the soil coming from Ethiopia that went into the banks of the Nile and fertilized the banks. And you get the most fertile land in the world, but speed it up. Think about it like super fast. Imagine that you could go like every year happens in a minute or a second, right? Then what you would see, and you're looking from the sky, the Nile, what you're going to see is that the Nile is palpitating, is pumping in and out, because it dries and then it floods and it dries and it floods.
Wow.
And every time it dries, when the waters recede, you get all this fertility on the sides, and then that fertility, as the river dries, the desert starts to encroach and grow back into the land and take over so it's this game, this cycle, this movement between life and death, like humidity, dry, like that fertility and sterility, right? Like is this, and it's pumping in and out. Is this cycle, and it happens yearly. It's a cycle that happens to happen once a year.
Wow.
So for them, as an agricultural society, the most important thing was to know when the flooding would happen, because that would determine when they had to plant and when they had to harvest and so on.
Exactly.
Because everything was moderated by that. So they were observing the stars as markers to find the rhythms of the Nile. And same thing happened, like this is the particular case of Egypt, right? That's their particular situation, the river. But if you go to northern places, then you have a similar problem, that is the seasons, right? Like in there they have seasons, they're not that marked, they don't get snow and so on because they're south, right? But as you go north, then you have the same existential problem, and it's that if you don't plan for winter, you're gonna die. So you have to plan. And how do you plan? Well, you have to know when winter is gonna come. And how do you know that? Well, you realize through observation that the seasons are related to the stars that you see every day in the sky that change with time. So in the sky, what you have is this clock that moves periodically every year. And through observation, you can see and determine when different seasons or when the flooding of the Nile is going to happen. So the main purpose of the temples was there were observatories, astronomical observatories, in order to be able to determine the seasons and the rhythms of time. And the priests, so look at what the priests are doing. The priests are observing the beings in the sky, the gods, in order to predict the future of what's going to come. That's astrology, right? But existential astrology is, when the hell are we going to get water on the river? And then what they do is the priests create calendars based on the observations of the movements of the stars. And with those observations and those calendars, they create then rituals and ceremonies and festivals that society follows. Oh, we have the harvesting festival and the planting festival and so on, and the getting drunk festival, which is we made beer, right? But in order to do that, you have to make the beer, so you have to like have all the crops and so on before that. So what the priest and the religion was a pacemaker to synchronize the societal activities of the people in Egypt to be harmonious with the cycles of time and the flooding of the Nile. And the reason why they were so successful is because they live in harmony with their environment, because they were able to follow the rules, the movements of the gods in the skies. But it's not wishy-washy, it's completely practical, it's pragmatical, and it's sublime. When you see it like that, it's incredible. It's so beautiful.
Wow.
That's what the book is about.
I bet at the end of putting this book together, I'm sure you were very excited to share it with all of us, but what do you feel was the most difficult and the most important part of your project, of your research and putting this book out? What do you feel was kind of difficult, and then also what did you want to get through to other people?
So all this work, it's difficult in the sense that it took a lot of time and effort to put it together, but I had in my head the way I didn't know, like with the story that I just told you, I didn't expect that would to be the story that was told by the ceiling, right? That the end point of the journey, the conclusion, I didn't know what it was, but I knew the work that I have to do in order to come up to a conclusion, which happened to be what I told you, right? Like I that's the punchline of the book, basically. At the end, I think the hardest thing is accepting, like there are so many obstacles when you create a project like this, and you don't realize that when I had the dream about this book, I didn't think about all the obstacles that I would have in order to bring this book into existence. And those obstacles are part of the book. Just like when you go and buy a car, a shiny Ferrari in a place, that Ferrari comes with the possibility of an accident and killing someone. And that car, the event of buying that car and that accident are the same thing. They're inseparable. One cannot be without the other. And any idea that you have and any dream that you have has all these complications and obstacles and things that are part of that book, right? Like this book comes with those things,
right? And
they're inseparable, and those are the things that you cannot foresee and think about beforehand. But you realize when you look in retrospective that's the case, right?
And what has been your feedback from archaeologists, collegiate staff, professors of archaeology, and have you had any feedback from them on your book, and maybe some backlash or even praise?
Yeah, like so this is a very niche book, as you can see, right? Like it's very I think there is a lot of interest in the topic itself, as I explained it to you, or as I told you. I think is gigantic, right? It's incredible. Like it's about how to survive, right? And how is humanity, is the story of humanity in expressing this in this thing, right? But on the surface is a book about a ceiling of a temple, right? And there is appetite for books in Egypt, but it's a niche market. It's a small market at the end. It's not like everyone wants to read about this.
Right.
And I wish it was the case, but it's not, right? Now, I work with a couple of very generous Egyptologists, like the guy who wrote the foreword of the book, Bob Breyer. He's a great Egyptologist, and yeah, I was very, very nervous about presenting this work to Egyptologists because it's not my field.
Right.
And then the other people who work or who read the book and gave me their support. There is another temple south from this. There is the Temple of Num at Esna, and then the head of the German expedition in charge of cleaning this ceiling, which is like around the same time of this, and it's another beautiful ceiling, like very similar to this one. I had the pleasure and honor to meet him, Christian, and he read the manuscript, and his wife, Daniela, who is she is another Egyptian Egyptologist, another Egyptologist, very knowledgeable and very wise. And they read the book and they like it. And I was super nervous to present my work because I'm nobody in this field to these luminaries. And it had a very favorable reception. They liked the work. So
love it. Well, I have two more questions. One is kind of a fun question. And it's the Dendera zodiac, which is a map of the stars on the temple ceiling, and it showcasing an Egyptian astrological knowledge. If you were an Egyptian astrologer, what prediction would you make for today's based on this zodiac? What do you have your little psychic abilities on yet, and maybe to be able to read something about what you would predict for the future?
In my mess here around me, a tinfoil hat that I
Right.
can put.
right.
Yeah, I would look at dark days coming, because we are violating the rule that they follow, that is being in harmony with the gods. Yeah. And we decided that we are the gods and we can subvert the harmony of the planet. And so I can predict dark days coming because we're violating rule number 1. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and in fact, next Friday, March 1st, I'm launching a nonprofit organization called Earthly Beings Foundation. And it's all about bringing ancient culture and ancient wisdom into the modern day world, because I feel like we've lost that wisdom that was given to us by the gods, and by just, taking the time and learning the wisdom from our ancestors. And so this organization is going to try to, create events and other showcasing, lost civilizations, culture, and I think maybe we should have you come out and talk about some of what you've learned, because
I want to be part of it.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we've lost, in fact, my spouse is from the Amazon. We're talking about how we're, like you're saying, destroying our forests and destroying, amazing cultures that are under the forest, that have been there hidden for centuries and thousands of years. And so I think it's time that we finally honor our ancient past and bring that knowledge back to the modern day world. So
absolutely.
So
let me know, how can I help? That sounds like a beautiful project.
I appreciate that. So last question. There are people that's been wanting to know, it's like, how, if they want to, they may have not heard of this temple before. If they wanted to start looking at the ceiling, what would you suggest where they start? Because there's a lot of panels, there's a lot of information on the ceiling. Where would you recommend somebody to start to learn how to decipher, how to maybe just understand this temple a little bit better?
So first, very unbiased suggestion is get my book.
Buy the book, yes. And there it is, right there.
And the way, the book is an introduction to ancient Egypt. But the whole book is a showcase of the images, which are beautiful. But the excuse around, and in order to understand those images, as I mentioned before, is give them context. So if you want to start by understanding Egypt, you can start with my book, because I think the essence of Egyptian knowledge is the style there in the book.
Right.
And very pragmatical, right? Because another problem that happens a lot, and it happens when you go to museums and many places, is that you go to a museum, say you go here in New York City to the Met, and you go to the Greek area of the Met, or the Egyptian area, and what they have is the different objects that they found, right, like, or they took from Egypt or whatever, and they say, oh, this is a image of the goddess Osiris of the year of the 3rd dynasty or 23rd dynasty, and that's the end of the story. You go to museums, no one explains to you what is the meaning. Why do we collect this crap here?
That's exactly why. That's exactly why I did the nonprofit, because nobody understands.
Is why. So the point is why these things, and it's very hard to find someone to tell you, well, the reason of this is because of this, and that's what I like to do. In order to understand things, you have to understand the why, and it should be obvious, right? Like, it shouldn't be any wishy-washy spooky thing. No, the truth is self-evident. Once you see it, and if you cannot explain the truth to a 5-year-old, that's not the truth.
Right,
And
right.
it should be super simple. And look at all these complicated images that I was showing you. But look at how simple and beautiful and succinct and parsimonious the explanations are. They're obvious. It's self-evident. Once you get it. And that's the point, right? Like that's to me the point is, in order to understand, you have to be able to explain this to a 5-year-old.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for writing this book. I appreciate you for the passion. I can hear it in your voice and on wanting to share this.
I'm Latin, man.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true. And I think you're from Colombia, right?
Yeah, I'm originally from Colombia.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you being here. You'll have to come back as we. There's probably a lot more questions. I'm sure about this amazing temple, amazing ceiling, and but people, where can they find your book? Where can they find more about who you are and what you're going to be doing?
Right. So you can see there right now. Thank you very much. My website, where you can find the ceiling and the interactive ceiling, and you can go there. And the book, Dendera, Temple of Time, you can get it on Amazon.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being part of Truth Be Told. It won't be the last, and I definitely will look forward to, once I get my nonprofit launched, I'm going to contact you, and we're going to try to spread the word about all this amazing knowledge and wisdom from our ancestors. So I appreciate it.
Tony, an honor and a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for always supporting us for the last 13 years, and really appreciate you guys taking the time, giving us names of amazing guests that we may have never even heard of. We love that when you share that. Please share this show with everyone. Subscribe, leave a great comment, review on our podcast, and please support us by watching Robert Hensley on Monday with Minuteman Report, Bonnie Burkert on Wednesday at 3 with Truth Be Told Transformation, and of course me every Friday right here on our YouTube channel, The Club Paranormal with Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows. This has been another